Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Zero Waste Asia Newsroom. This is Robicate Miranda, Communications Officer for Campaigns of Gaia Asia Pacific, and we're reporting from Geneva, Switzerland, where INC 5.2, the latest round of negotiations for the Global Plastic Treaty, is taking place. And I'm joined once again by Arpita Bagat, Gaia Asia Pacific's Plastic Policy Officer. Hi, Arpita. Welcome back to the Zero Waste Asia Newsroom.
Hi, Robbie. Hi, everyone.
All right, so yesterday was the official start of INC 5.2. Can you share updates from yesterday and are there any signs of progress or breakthroughs so far?
Yes, yesterday was interesting. We talked about the plenary before, but the similar tactics from bad faith negotiators, where they tried to complain about Article 6 on sustainable production being out of the scope of this instrument. Then there was also the interventions from industry. And lastly, we had changes in how the contact groups are organized. So we had 1 and 3 scheduled simultaneously, one being about core obligations, Article 3, 5, 6, and so on, and contact group 3 being about finance. And Africa group of negotiators were very clear that given the small size of their delegations, they cannot have both of these running together. So there was a quick change in how the contact groups were organized, thankfully. So what we had yesterday was 1 and 4 happening simultaneously, and then 2 and 3 happening simultaneously. And so there were 2 sessions between 3 and 6 in the afternoon, and then from 7:30 onwards in the evening, that had these discussions happen. And interestingly, all the contact groups had a session happening. And what we saw is discussion happening on Article 6 and definitions, which is Article 2, and then scope in the first contact group. And similar issues that one would imagine were seen with the spoiler countries trying to challenge the life cycle approach, talking about that it should be limited to plastic waste, that that plastic production should be out of scope. And eventually, it seems like there's Japan actually made a proposal on Article 6 that they propose to call it sustainable consumption and production, not sustainable production alone. And of course, this is available on the UNEP in session submission site. But this kind of indicates the level of ambition that countries are bringing. And eventually, the discussion. So let's remind ourselves that this is the first time that scope was discussed in contact group 1, along with Article 6, which is on supply. Traditionally, this has been discussed in contact group 4 with articles on principles, on preamble, and the rest of the articles starting from Article 13 onwards. And so this was a new change, and this created some confusion, or at least certain countries pretended to be confused, because let's be clear, there's no text on scope yet, but scope is a fundamental part of these negotiations, as we have seen from the INC 2 and 3 onwards, where the spoiler countries do not want it to start with extraction of fossil fuels. Some countries are okay for it to start at the polymerization state, whereas some countries want to completely limit this instrument to plastic waste management alone. And we saw similar views on that. The discussion on contact group 2 focused on actually got stuck on Article 7 alone, which is on emissions and leakages. And folks can see from the publication, the Scientist Coalition had actually on Article 7, where they talk about why this article is so important. And it was a strange discussion, because the similar bad faith negotiators actually didn't want this article to be there at all. Whoever thought that Article 7 would be contentious? We were not prepared for it. And unfortunately, Article 7, in this contact group, we countries were divided between line by line negotiations or para by para, where they could essentially see the whole thing together and reflect on it. That was what other contact groups did, but contact group 2 ended up with a similar situation as in INC-4 in Canada, where, if you recall, countries kept expressing their opinions, adding text in brackets, and then, of course, suggesting text to be deleted. So we had a very bloated Article 7 as a result of that. UK and Panama had a very interesting proposal, which was workable, which is reasonably ambitious. And eventually, thankfully, and the CRP, the conference room paper, is available in the in-session submission. Most of the countries supported the UK and Panama proposal as a basis of further textual development. And what's expected is an informal meeting around this particular proposal, based on this proposal, that would further develop. Contact Group 3 on finance did not really get into negotiations, but they basically decided to go into informals based on the current CRP that is available. And folks can see there's a CRP actually also from Saudi Arabia on behalf of GCC, and perhaps also from AOSIS and Africa Group. Remains to be seen what they do, because we ran out of time yesterday night. And if I could just briefly get into Contact Group 4, it was, I think, the space where most progress was made, at least on 2 or 3 articles after 20, which come after 20. They didn't discuss most of the contentious articles, like the decision-making via voting or consensus in COPs, in Conference of Parties, but there was interesting discussion on the objective of the instrument, with clear division between parties who wanted full life cycle approach to be integrated, who wanted health to be protected as part of the overall objective of this instrument, to those who absolutely did not want full life cycle mentioned, did not even want life cycle, did not want health to be integrated, and did not want to use the framing to end plastic pollution, because apparently that seems like an unachievable target according to some. So clear dividing lines, and a lot of informals are expected to happen based on what has been discussed, because one thing is clear, that if we continue to have discussions the way we've been having, we will not reach any kind of convergence. Back to you, Robbie.
All right. Thank you so much, Arpita, for sharing those updates from yesterday. And you mentioned, of course, about the contact group meetings, and we know that they are closed and not accessible to the public. So how can people get more information for these meetings?
Yes, so like I said, and I think this is very important, while people might not be able to hear the nitty-gritty, what country is saying, what the other countries, how they're responding, what are the country dynamics. But if you go to the in-session submission documents, and I request the team to post the link for that one, you can see all different submissions. They are known as conference room papers, and there is a special emphasis for submissions that are coming from a group of countries, which is why even before we got to this, INC countries have been rallying support around their position for specific articles. And you can see those, like the UK and Panama proposal I mentioned, like the proposal from Saudi. There are also a lot of proposals on objective, which could be seen in Contact Group 4. And so you have to just go into different contact group breakouts, the 4 contact groups, and you will see submissions from your country, and submissions just keep coming. So it's not like it's going to pause. But according to the plenary, if I remember correctly, the submissions, CRPs are expected until the 7th of August, which is tomorrow, till the evening of 7th, because there's supposed to be a stock take plenary to basically take stock of what the progress has been in contact groups so far. And that's expected to be, I think, tomorrow evening or 8th morning. It will totally depend on the progress we make today. But essentially, just because you're not here doesn't mean that you can't find any information. Robbie.
All right, thank you so much, Arpita, and we'll definitely also add the link to our for our live viewers. So reuse is also a hot topic now. So how do you think reuse is being pushed for this year's or for this INC 5.2?
Yes, so reuse is one of the most sort of non-controversial subject, but at the same time, it is the most least understood properly. So reuse has been kind of contorted to mean reuse of plastic products, reuse of plastic waste, and sometimes deliberately, sometimes because countries still do not entirely understand reuse. This has been happening. And so our members in Asia have been leading their efforts to ensure that in this treaty, we have a very strong language around reuse, and which emphasizes reuse as a system, reuse as a goal, reuse as a principle. And they work tirelessly, especially our members from Southeast Asia, to come to some kind of textual suggestion. So in the way we see reuse, reuse currently reflects in Article 5, very specifically on product design, where reuse along with refill, repair, and refurbish is mentioned. Redesign, of course, is there, but all of these elements are still not defined, right? So there is a lot of room to play around in terms of what they mean. There is no universally agreed definition of reuse that we know of. So they've been focusing on developing text that can really ensure that reuse is strongly represented the way we would like it, the way we see it in Asia. And also Article 8, which is on plastic waste management, because some countries emphasize that in order for us to kind of move towards reuse, we need to first ensure that waste hierarchy is represented in that article. So waste hierarchy starting with waste prevention, then going into redesign and reuse. And that's the way they're trying to push it as well in these two articles. And that's important because if we don't have priority for reuse over recycling in this treaty, we will not have priority support, financial support, capacity building support for reuse. And that's really what Asia and the rest of the world needs to scale up reuse the way we envision the world away from plastics. Robbie?
All right, thank you so much, Arpita. And for our viewers, what do we expect today and also for the rest of this week?
We expect a lot of informals to be happening, actually, informals. And we expect certain contact group discussions. I'm specifically keen to see how contact group 1 picks up on the scope discussion, because that could be a very, very contentious, divisive issue, and remains to be seen how countries really show up. Will they stand for ambition or they concede defeat? I think it's particularly crucial time today for us because the frustration and the similar procedural tactics remain to be resolved in this INC. And it's clear, given how we bloated Article 7, for example, that we might be falling in the same trap of delay and confuse and basically find loopholes. Particularly concerning to me yesterday was how the mention of health was there were countries trying to remove it very deliberately, and that should not be the case for us. So I think by the end of today, we will know whether there could be some kind of strong opposition coming from the ambitious countries, specifically countries who also signed the Nice Declaration. From what we know, 100 countries is supported. Because we really need ambitious countries to stand up and sort of to really demand some course correction to happen on process. Otherwise, we'll just be going in circles for many, many INCs without conclusion, and that's not how we want things to go. We need to set a good precedent on process, and we need to set it now. Robbie.
All right, so thank you so much, Repito, for today's expectations for today and also for the rest of the week. And also for sharing the insights from yesterday. So we'll follow the progress closely. And to our viewers, please stay informed, stay involved, and also keep pushing for a treaty that truly supports reuse and also protect our communities. For ongoing updates, please follow Zero Waste Newsroom and Zero Waste Asian News Breaks on social media at Zero Waste Asia on Instagram and YouTube, and Gaia Asia Pacific on Facebook and LinkedIn. Once again, this is Robbie Kate Miranda signing off. See you again tomorrow for more updates from the Global Plastics Treaty negotiations. Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
so
Goodbye.
much.
Thank you, Arpita. Bye-bye.